Great. Thank you, everyone, for attending Just Foods, joining us for Just Foods Spring 2021 CSA Forum. I would like to introduce Cheryl Durant, the president of the board of Just Food.
Uh, Hi, everybody. Welcome. Thanks for calling, for joining us today at 6 for this forum. This is the second in a series of COVID forums. Can I say that? 2020, last year was our first forum, and so many of you responded to our survey um, about tonight's forum, addressing concerns for the upcoming season and inviting folks to share best practices. One of the things I wanted to bring to folks' attention is that we have been working on our website, which is now live, and as part of the work that we do for CSAs, our value chain map is one of our assets, and we invite people to, visit our new website and look through our value chain map. And if you need to update your information for the value chain map or to become part of our network, we'll send out information after this forum for you to do so. I'm just going to quickly go through the run of show. So I'm giving intros, and I'll introduce Ali Issa, who is the general coordinator for CNIC, which is the Cooperative Economic Alliance of New York City. I'm also on that board, so I'm very happy to have my colleague here he'll share updates for the recent winter meeting and how cooperatives around the city have been affected by COVID, and how CNIC and the solidarity economy can work towards a movement of solidarity with CSAs. Next on our agenda, after Ali, we'll address topics brought up by the responses to our questions via email, and Shari will then switch to Anna, who will talk generally about EBT, because we know that that is one of a topic of interest for folks. And then from 6:40 to 6:55, we'll have an open discussion, sharing best practices, asking new questions, voicing concerns. We invite folks to use the chat to put in their questions, and Shari will moderate, and we'll also jump in if we can answer some of those questions. And hopefully by 7 p.m. we can wrap up, and Shari will, unless anyone else wants to have anything else to say outside of what we have addressed during the forum, before we wrap up, they can do so. And then Shari will move on to closing and then some next steps. Okay. So is Ali on? Was he able to come back on? So Ali, it's your time. Take it away.
Thank you so much, Cheryl, and everybody else for having me. I'm very honored to be part of this forum and to connect to more of you. I'm going to try to share my screen as well, but I think maybe, Cheryl, you might have to relinquish that power. Thank you. Power sharing, that's what cooperation is all about. So yeah, I'm here. I spoke with a few of you actually that are here. It's nice to see Anastasia and others about just the state of their particular CSAs. And I'm going to talk about what the Cooperative Economics Alliance is, as well as yeah, how you relating to other cooperatives might be of benefit, especially kind of in our particular historical moment. So I'm now attempting to share, and see, that's what's great. Like the technological challenges, they allow for much more banter, which is really my main strength. Community organizing and then banter originally. So sorry, 1 second. I'm trying to share my sharing. I think I'm sharing now. And then, yeah, actually, Sherry had this great piece of advice, which I tried to follow and I failed at, where you could just see the presentation right away. But look at me not doing that at all, and rather you seeing behind the scenes. That's what's great about these meetings. Okay, so here we go. I'll take about 10 minutes, just kind of go through that, and then would love, of course, if we have time for a brief discussion, but I think it'll unfold into the broader agenda Cheryl outlined. So the Cooperative Economics Alliance of New York City, of which I'm the general coordinator. You see it here. It aims to strengthen and expand community-led and democratically controlled initiatives. That means worker, financial, and consumer co-ops, community land trusts, gardens, mutual housing, and low-income housing co-ops, and of course, CSAs, which we'll get to. And the goal broadly is to build an economy based on values of social and racial justice, ecological sustainability, cooperation, mutualism, and democracy. And what that means, I think concretely for us, is going back to the international cooperative principles, which some people may be familiar with. So I'll just share a slide that outlines those. Would anybody dare to volunteer to just read these really quickly, just to have a little bit of participation in the mix? Don't be shy. I put a plant in the audience in case nobody, so.
If somebody wants to raise their hand, I can unmute you. Okay, Anastasia, I see you. Ask to unmute. The beauty of things here. All right.
So the 7 cooperative principles are voluntary open membership, democratic member control, cooperation among cooperatives, autonomy and independence, member economic participation, concern for the community, and education, training, and information.
Thank you, Anastasia. Yeah, so those go back centuries really, but just try to foreground those because a part of Scenic's goal is to help ground cooperative efforts around the city in these principles and then see where that can take us in terms of building economic and political power, especially as we focus on what's known as principle number 6, cooperation among cooperatives. So that means like this gathering right here, obviously CSAs are part of this cooperative economy, but then across sectors, I think is also kind of the thing that we want to unleash. So briefly to touch on that, we have this slide, which I know it says in big letters, not just co-ops, just to emphasize that many of these practices are beyond just what's standardly known as a cooperative. People often like worker-owned business, but it goes way beyond that. So you see here, this is kind of the ellipse or cycle of how an economy or resources are shared. And you see kind of the particular aspects that can fulfill. So you have what you think of as banking or credit unions in terms of loan funds, production, which you all are kind of in the area of. Think about farming and the creation of things, and that going to exchange, and then finally consumption and wheeling back around. And so kind of thinking about what is a supply chain that might be determined by those principles and independent from, let's say, how Amazon functions or a grocery store that's not connected to a CSA. So just keeping that in mind, wanted to switch to just a recent example that I've been very inspired by. There's a group some might be familiar with called Brooklyn Packers, which is based in central Brooklyn in Bed-Stuy. And so they have kind of allied, partially transformed into a CSA called Brooklyn Supported Agriculture. They've been partnering with a farm some people might know called Lancaster Farm up in Pennsylvania, a cooperative farm. And they've been distributing partially kind of mutual aid in response to COVID, as well as based on the network that the Central Brooklyn Food Co-op, which is a nascent network in Central Brooklyn, trying to create a food co-op, has built over the past several years. So this was just a very nice example of like a micro supply chain. And then actually talking to people with Norwood in the Northwest Bronx, I heard another example of. So just thinking about what kind of particular ecosystem can be built based on these various neighborhood efforts and what happens when you link them together, not to speak of kind of the finance and other such possibilities. So that's a quote. I'll just pause, maybe people read it for a moment. But not too long, because I don't want to take too much time. So sorry to interrupt your reading. But we could talk about this article and I just noticed it talking to a few of the Just Food members, they were very interested in what's happening in this particular case and seeing parallels where they are. So moving on further to explicitly identify the other kinds of members that Scenic has in its network, there are food cooperatives. And I was going to play a little game where I had people guess the number of these institutions, but that might be somewhat complex because of the muting. So I'll just have people imagine and then I'll answer. So how many food cooperatives are there in New York City? Think about it. The answer is.
Wait, folks could put it in the chat if they want to.
Oh, see, this is why, Sherry, you are helping facilitate this meeting, because you know how to suggest brilliant ideas. So yeah, so I'll give people just a few seconds. So food cooperatives, a few seconds. How many are there? Do you think, or do you know?
We have two answers here, 20, and somebody else said 93. We have 70.
All right. Okay. In that case, okay, there are 6, which is supposed to be an impressive number, but compared to 90, it's not. So thanks to the person that said 90. But this one is, okay, so we're moving on. That's still a lot, relatively speaking. And they're very connected to CSAs, obviously, or they can be. Community gardens, another food system relation. How many community gardens are there in New York City?
Hundreds.
Yes. And Cheryl, since you were people putting in the chat, are they guessing? Are they are asserting their knowledge?
574.
Yeah. So I think the estimates that I last saw, and you know about this better than me, Cheryl, but I think it's 550 or so, at least that are known, and those are independent gardens.
Yep.
So it's a huge amount. Credit unions, specifically community development credit unions, which are about low-income communities and are specifically mission-driven. As nonprofit financial cooperatives, there are 16 of those, which is very rich, relatively speaking. Worker cooperatives, there are a growing number of those as well. Those are around in the 75 range. Worker-owned businesses where workers have one vote and share the profits. Community land trusts, some people might be familiar with. Those are nonprofits that take land out of the speculative market so that gardens, buildings, residences can be built on them for deep affordability, which of course is related to the housing crisis here. There are 16 of those emerging in New York City. So it's a very powerful growing movement. Housing cooperatives, specifically ones that are shared equity or low equity, again, about racial and economic justice. There's more than 1,200 of those. So there you go. That's a number no one's gonna guess. And finally, CSAs. How many are there? I don't know exactly. I kind of, does people know? How many are there in the city?
Let people guess.
Okay.
Before we answer that question. Wow, CSA folks, nobody's guessing. And Shari, I'll leave that one to you since you're the lead on this. You're the expert. Thank you. We got our answer.
I was also estimating based on the Just Food Network. Plus, I know there are other things that are other models that are called CSAs. So I think my number still might even be low because I think within the Just Food Network there was around 120, if I'm not mistaken.
126, yeah.
So I upped it a little bit, but I think I still might be under. So
wow.
A lot.
Amazing. Yeah. So I mean, I think maybe the point is clear. There's a very rich cooperative ecosystem of democratically controlled institutions, and I think the potential there for them to work together, learn from each other, and build political power is vast. But though we have great numbers in all these institutions, they rarely work together, which is part of the point of Scenic's existence. Watching the time, I'm just going to fly through some slides, not to take too much of the meeting here. But these are sectoral networks, of which Just Food is one. They're some of the most active. housing co-op networks, gardens, credit unions that are part of Scenic. So this also means that if you're part of Just Food, you are part of Scenic as a member, which is very exciting. So welcome to membership, in case you weren't aware. And then finally, just the demographics. It's just because of how they formed from redline communities, um, historical disinvestment. This is why they're led by women of color. This is why they focus on care and why they're very connected to movements for racial and economic justice. Flying through, excuse my skipping of the slides, the winter meeting, it was great. Many dozens of our members came. We're having a summer meeting in a few months. The focus here was on NICNOC's presentation, and NICNOC is the New York City Network of Worker Cooperatives. They were presenting because people might be aware there's a mayoral, city council, and controller election coming up in June. A lot of people are using phrases like care economy, solidarity economy, and to think about how these institutions can intervene in that. The worker co-op sector specifically has a platform, they have an advocacy council, and so they presented to our members about how they're gonna have a forum in the coming months, and hopefully as an inspiration to think about all these sectors, might they also create councils? Might they have a platform to put demands to the city and say, this is how you should support housing cooperatives, food cooperatives, credit unions, and CSAs. So just as a teaser, this is what their platform looks like, just a few bullet points, but based on the needs of CSAs, what would you all like to demand of these candidates, or when they're elected, these officials? That'd be something that Scenic would really be happy to encourage and facilitate in any way we can. And these are some of the ways we're doing that. I mentioned NICNOC just a second ago. So they're having a candidate forum because they have built that council on the 23rd of this month. You're welcome to attend, see them in action, and think about how it applies to your work. We have strong connection with the Guardians we're presenting to them, and we do these 101s to get deeper into what is the solidarity economy, what might it mean to build economic and political power. And then finally, we have our membership meeting where we'll have board elections, and maybe one of you can become my boss, as in a board member of Scenic, even though we don't believe in bosses. So there we have it. Thank you for listening, and I look forward to getting to know you all better. Take it away, Sherry or Cheryl.
Sherry, do you want people to ask questions, or can I ask Ali to share the PowerPoint so that when we send out our next steps? Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I can switch it if folks have questions they want to ask, they can type in the chat, or I can actually unmute folks now for a few minutes, and you can unmute yourselves if you would like, and ask a question. Or comment. I was very surprised that there's only, did you say 6 food cooperatives? I feel like there's more. Obviously,
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, that's also a sector actually, and I think that's an important point because it's really the only sector that doesn't have a sectoral support network like Just Food. So I think creating that is key, and there's also the question of kind of the logistical challenges of creating a food cooperative and how linking to others might help. Financing questions. So yeah, that's not as high as or as dense as the others, but they're growing.
Mm-hmm. Makes sense. Does anyone else have questions? I see Michelle Hannah has her hand up. I'll ask to unmute, which should cue you in.
Hi there.
Oh, there you are.
Hi. I'm a member of the Norwood CSA in the Bronx, and our CSA has been talking about how we might make the CSA in general more equitable for our community. And a lot of that has come down to, as I'm sure you guys know, the upfront cost associated with being a member of our CSA. And also the increased cost due to COVID and some of the additional ways the CSA needs to be prepared and handled and labor and all of that has become a little bit limiting for our members. And besides doing like a GoFundMe, which we did to help subsidize some of the cost, or having some of the other members pay a little bit more if they can, we're wondering if there is a way that the community might be able to help us think of that would fundraise in an equitable way or allow us to subsidize some of the costs in a more equitable way. We've kind of reached maybe the end of what our CSA is able to do on its own. And so we wanted to pose that to the group as maybe an ideation exercise.
Sure. So that sounded like a group thing. I don't know if Ollie, if you had anything specific towards that, or we could be thinking too, because I think that, I mean, that's definitely one of the top concerns is funding and support for allowing access for lower income. Ruth, I think you should be able to unmute yourself, but I'll let Ollie, if you had a comment.
Yeah, I think the wisdom here is far surpasses mine, but just the reason why I mentioned Brooklyn Packers, Brooklyn Supported Agriculture, and how they're working is because they have such a strong focus on, food justice and making their CSA efforts as equitable as possible in Central Brooklyn. So, Raina, Cheryl is part of our board. Many people are active. I'm not as clear on the technical aspects of how they're achieving that in terms of cutting down distribution costs or relying on mutual aid networks that are existing and building on them. But I just thought that if I was able to connect you all to them, Norwood and Central Brooklyn, that might be a way, because I think they're on to something, but I can't quite name it at the moment. But I could share the context there, and that might be a rich conversation.
Sure.
Ruth, did you want to say something?
I can. I don't know how much you're doing already. We do several things to get ourselves equity that we can use to subsidize our low-income members. The most basic thing we do is we take the share price that our farmer gives us every year. This is Windflower Farm. And we have a 3-tiered pricing system based on income. So we take the share price and artificially manipulate it so that we add to the cost for our high income members. And that allows us to subsidize what I would call our mid-tier income members. We also have a tier for members who are eligible for SNAP benefits. And we're fortunate because our farmer does have in place the ability to process SNAP, and that is a great boon for his network of CSAs. But what we do is we charge an admin fee, an administration fee, to all of our high income and mid income members. And that is $25 a year. And we use that to directly subsidize our SNAP eligible members. So we allocate through that. We have about 140 members. We are able to use about $2,000 a year to subsidize 10 shares for members who are eligible for SNAP benefits, so that they pay, if they have a full share of 22 weeks, they pay under $200, and we allow them to use directly the EBT benefits. We also were cautious about asking our members for direct donations above and beyond the admin fee, but last year, because our unexpected costs were so high, and specifically our farmers' costs were so high, since he had set his pricing level before the pandemic and all hell broke loose, we did ask members for donations to subsidize his extra packaging costs. And our high income members were very generous. So, you know, we sort of have a mix of things that let us build in equity and bring in low income members. I don't know if that's helpful.
Yeah, it is. And it sounds like our CSAs are potentially facing similar logistical, operational problems or with the pandemic. I think our CSA is a little bit smaller, but I'd be interested to know how does your CSA determine who is in what tier of financial ability? Is that self-reported? Is there a survey attached to it when you join? Does it change on a year-to-year basis? Can you like change your status, I suppose?
It's self-reported. We had a core member a few years ago who did some research into income levels in our neighborhood. She had a city planning background and knew actually how to do this. So our tiers are above $65,000 is our top tier per household. Middle tier, I think is, I'm sorry, I don't remember off the top of my head, it's on their website. And we ask people to self-report. We have never we've never done any research to see if people are telling the truth. I think largely they are. And obviously if someone has SNAP benefits, we will know that because we'll use them. But we do have occasional members who say they're eligible for SNAP, but they don't have them. And we just assume we price them as if they were SNAP eligible.
Okay, I think that's a really helpful idea. Thank you.
Thank you guys for that. That was actually part of what I was going to cover. So you covered some of the slides already, even though you didn't know. I'm actually going to take us through a couple of the slides. And like I said, we had some key concerns that I heard from you all in your comments back. And I wanted to address those and then we'll open it back up again. So I'm going to quickly share my screen.
Sorry, is Ali still here?
Yeah, he's still
Ali, if you could put your email address in the chat so that if people want to reach out to you directly for questions, and also a reminder to send us the final presentation so we can share it with members so that they can also share it with their network.
Of course, I'd be happy to. Thank you, Cheryl.
Yeah, I put your website on here, but I did not put your email address. So, okay, so I'm going to ask everyone to mute themselves again, and we'll leave it on, we'll leave it on, voluntary unmute, but I'm going to trust that everyone's going to mute themselves. And thank you, Ali, for that. Thank you for Ruth and Michelle and your comments. It's going pretty fast here. The couple of key concerns I heard from you guys, and I do want to mention that I think, as you can imagine, we heard that folks had a variety of experiences last year. Some was smooth, some found more community, some, had newer, better relationships with their farmers. Some lost their sites, some lost their farmer and didn't have a season last year. So we had ranges all over the spectrum on that. But a couple of the key concerns that came up was promotion outreach, providing access to all income levels, which is what we were just talking about, and fundraising to be able to do some of those things. So I just pulled a couple of ideas, and again, you can, put other ideas in the chat. This is by no means an exhaustive list because, as we all know, there's many things you can do, but especially as we've had to transition in COVID times, some of I'm Sherry Rickle. I'm the one of the core group coordinators of Brooklyn Bridge CSA, and we have we've been like 11 years. And we've had a transition from, being able to go out to the local businesses that are open and put our flyers up to now what do we do? Where's all the online people? Nobody wants us in their buildings, you know? So we've been trying to ramp up our social media, of course, your Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, the Just Food value chain map, which I think Cheryl mentioned. We will definitely be doing the spring survey. So I know a lot of folks were great and updated last year when they had changes with COVID. We got a lot more input. And so I definitely, when you guys see that come out, I definitely want to get your updates, you know, incorporated so that folks that use the value chain map and look for it can find you properly. And that's for those that don't know, if you're not on the map, we should talk because that's part of being in the Just Food Network. And we'll send out a separate email about the fees and things for that because that's, we, you know, need some support to be able to do that. And that's not an easily, you know, grant funded situation. So we do depend on the network support for that, but also realizing that it's a hard time for CSAs as well. So, and funding there. You can also go to your local blogs if you have any newsletters that are published, like we have Brooklyn Bridge Parents that, you know, covers Dumbo and other areas. And so we're in there. Nextdoor, if anyone needs, that's like you have to get an email invite to it. But if you're not familiar with Nextdoor, please send me an email. I can send you an email invite. It's a great, I found it's a great tool for, you know, connecting in the area. Like our expanded area is like, I don't know how many neighborhoods, several thousand people. So it's a great online tool. There's always the flyers in laundry rooms. If you have any internal building systems, and if you're in a larger building, local businesses, business improvement districts, community boards, elected officials, like whatever we can think of, right, to help get the word out. And part of the spring survey, we usually ask if you have, you know, photos or text we can use. We'll try to be able to promote on the Just Food side because we can send out on our Instagram or on, you know, any sort of promotion that we can do.
The other thing I want to add on to that list is that you could also look at your neighborhood schools because there's a lot of families. People have children at home now. They're cooking far more food than they have been in the past. Your neighborhood religious institutions, because even though they may not be having services or the children may not be in school, they're still communicating via virtually. And so that's another way to get the word out about your CSA.
Yes, thank you for that, Sia. That is definitely important, especially if you distribute at a church. They may have a newsletter, and you know maybe most people don't that are in the church don't pick up at your CSA, but they may be willing to promote it in their newsletter. So definitely a good thing. Thank you. Okay, our next topic, which we talked a little bit about, is how to provide access, some options to provide access to multiple income levels, including being able to offer EBT. So the sliding scale, I think, is more along the lines of what Ruth was talking about. We also offer that in our CSA and found that works really well, although ours is a little different where we have like we have the sponsored and then the subsidized versions. And then what happens is all except for one season, we've always had more sponsors than we've had subsidized. So it kind of is a self-covering situation. And so we haven't had to fundraise for anything like that. But I know that other groups and other CSAs do, where they have a revolving loan fund, because as many or all of you know, the you know, your farmers usually need their payments up front, right? So then you have to come up with the funds to give to them, but some people may not be able to pay right away. I think I have on here, you know, they have multiple, you know, they can pay by the week, which is also from the revolving loan fund. And I have a note that there's a grant proposal layout. It may be a little bit dated, but I think it's in a handout that I have, so I can share that with you folks if that's something that you know of, some options to apply for a grant to start a revolving loan fund to help with finances. Sliding scale, we talked about payment plans. That's, you know, I thought I saw someone in the chat. Yeah, Rana, and I'm sorry if I pronounced your name wrong, said their farmer offered a 5 installment payment plan during COVID, which is great. We do just within ours. If folks email us, we work out something with them. Usually we try to have it paid before the season, but that doesn't always happen. But we have enough carryover in our little revolving loan fund that it works. More than one share size is referred to like more accessibility. If there's a full share, there could be partial shares, so your cost is a little bit less for someone each week. There's a savings group, which I added with a question mark because I'm not familiar with this. It was in some reference material, but it says there at one point we were working with staff at a community-based organization to develop savings groups designed for low-income community members to save for and plan for the CSA as part of their budget. So depending on, you know, what members you might have, that could be an option. Sister CSA partnership, there's a couple different ones, but if you have other organizations or other CSAs that use the same farm, they may be able to, you know, use extra funds if you have some from a sponsorship to help with a revolving loan fund. We do that at Brooklyn Bridge CSA. We also work with the Crown Heights Farm Share because we share the same farmer, and we use our extra funds and donate it to their revolving loan fund each year. So that's just one thing that has been working for us over the last several years. And EBT is something that we don't offer, but I've asked Anna, who is on the Just Food board, to do a quick run through of that for you all in case you're not familiar with what it takes to accept EBT or food stamps. So Anna.
Hi. Hi, everybody. Great to see so many CSAs, co-farmers and CSAs. Yeah, so I think like it sounds like a few of you already know about the EBT, like, which is just an electronic like card. It looks like a credit card, right? To accept SNAP benefits for folks that qualify. And basically, I think one of the things that it's just like the basic stuff, like if you were going to go and do it on your own, you will apply to the Department of Agriculture. And then after you get that, they said it will take like a few weeks, but in reality, it will take a lot more. So one of the things that, and I think Ruth, you were talking about that earlier, about trying to understand like your capacity, also to have, if you are like one farm stand and like, you have to have someone every week to, once you get accepted, you have to have someone every week to be able to process the benefits. You have to have someone that has an account to be able to accept these benefits, right? So all of this stuff that you go through the application, and to have the actual, the transmitter, which now is very wireless. You put like a little thing on your phone. It's different options of what those options are. But I think the most important thing for CSAs that might be small, I think, is to try to partner with an organization, or I think, like Ruth mentioned before, like having a farmer that can process this, it will take a lot out of your time, especially if you're trying to struggle and you want to invite more people with different income to come in. At the same time, a lot of this income, because you don't have these ways of processing, it gets lost, because you can make a lot of money using this type of payment, right? So those are kind of like the things about to consider when you're thinking about if you want to have EBT on your own and apply it for yourself. Like really consider like what is your capacity, and how can you get a network so you can have those things to do it. But if you're a small place, I have to really reiterate that connecting with your farmer is like a win-win, and then you can really bring a lot more people to it. Yeah, that's kind of like like a little snapshot. Like there's a whole other like hour of just like EBT and SNAP benefits, and I think we have different levels, but if somebody that already has EBT at their farms, and Ruth, thank you so much. And I saw somebody was putting something in the chat. Please join in, and if you want to unmute yourself, and if I left anything that might be very important, please do share.
Okay. Thank you, Anna. Thank you. I'm just going to quickly go through the last slide, and then I want to open it up because I know folks want to share a little bit as well, and there's some great things going on in the chat. Just potential funding sources. You may have thought of these, you might not have. So we wanted to, highlight a few of them. Community businesses, banks sometimes, and again, with COVID, it's maybe more difficult, but it never hurts to ask. Socially or environmentally conscious businesses, merchants who sell items that you need, like scales or something like that. Maybe they can donate something to you so that it would save something that you have to buy. And I know a lot of you all are more established, if I saw correctly in what was coming through the chat, but there are a few newer CSAs. So just some ideas. And then community boards, borough president's office sometimes have discretionary funds, obviously nonprofits. And then there's candid.org is part of where GuideStar is now housed under. So you can check, it looks like there's a fee for the database access, but there's some trainings and there's some other things that may or may not have a fee. So that might be helpful to you. So that's all I had for the sort of key concerns. One thing I saw in the chat going through was insurance, because I know sometimes folks have a struggle with that. And we also ask our farm to add on. So we've been covered lately with that. Right now, Just Food does not have any sort of, unfortunately, does not have any sort of additional insurance program that we can offer folks. But I'm happy to, see if there's more comments. And I think you can all still, I think I'm going to unmute myself. This is the second to the last, or stop screen sharing so we can all see each other a little bit better. Our email is advisory@justfood, and we'll share, the comments from the chat and the resources that we talked about. So, oh, interesting. Has anyone approached a library as a distribution site for their CSA? So folks, feel free to unmute yourself, jump in, questions. Anyone on the library?
Yeah. We've been in a school for most of our time. Last year we distributed outside of theater, but we're looking for a new location while the school decides if they can host us this summer. And I just spoke yesterday with our local librarian. She is checking with her boss at the Brooklyn Public Library. It may be an option because they have a good sidewalk, but the real issue is storage. Since they're basically not open for browsing now, they do have indoor storage space, but she needs to check whether she can give it to us. And since our farmer is sending down the share in reusable cardboard boxes this year, we do need indoor storage. So stay tuned. I would be happy to share on the network group if they do say yes. And this is
That's
Brooklyn.
great. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Cindy, for joining us. I see you're off. So there's some questions going around. Let me see if I can catch the first one up here about collecting. Oh, well.
I have I'm listening to some of the questions, and I'm wondering if the trainings that we did for Fresh Connect that included EBT and other stuff if resources in that would be helpful to CSA members.
It's possible. I'll just say one thing about the whole credit card situation. We use Woofu to sign people up, and then we pay just for the months we have to. And that allows us to accept payments. It's $40 a month for what we need. We have about 120 households. And what we do is offer on our sign up form, we offer folks to pay by credit card, but we actually pass off the credit card fee to them, or they can pay by check. So that's how we handle it, because we just can't afford it to pay for the credit card fees. And that, I think, is the problem with, using PayPal, because we did use PayPal for a long time. But that's how we've handled credit card fees lately. So, and I'm not sure about the TD Bank Venmo situation. I personally try not to use my own Venmo for it. And I don't know if there's a business Venmo or if folks are using their own personal one. And yet Cheryl mentioned that we had done an EBT training, and I have to admit, I wasn't able to attend it, so I don't know all the details. But if you think that could be beneficial, Cheryl, maybe once we're able to get all the resources together, we could also share that with this group.
Yeah, we're gonna load it up on the website as well once it's edited. But I think some of the resources here will be helpful to people.
Yeah, if people really want to go through the application and learn more and like really start weighting what will be the best case scenario. But it's good something to have for the future, I think, if it's worth it. But yeah, we can put a little something when it's edited for sure.
Yeah, sure.
And there's a question: can we get a copy of the chat? Yes, we'll take all the key inputs out of there and share it with you all. You can have a business bank account connected to a non-business Venmo. Oh, that's interesting. I did not know that.
Yes.
These are things that I'm not as familiar with. Any other
Sorry,
thoughts?
what did you
General?
say about a business Venmo, a business bank account attached to a non-business Venmo? So then is the Venmo in the individual's name and not in the CSA's name?
I'm happy to try and explain it. I have a small business, so this isn't related to the CSA. It's just based on my anecdotal usage of it. So I have a business bank account, which was one of the things going through the chat, is that they had a TD business bank account, which I also have a TD.
Yeah, that's me.
Oh, okay, great. Yeah, and so I have just a Venmo account set up to it. Our CSA this year started using a Venmo, which they created for the CSA, and you would just link it to whatever bank account. An individual would have to monitor it, but it wouldn't necessarily be your personal Venmo. You connect it via phone number. So it could be, somebody else's, it could be whatever phone number is associated with whatever Venmo account. Does that make sense a little bit or no?
Yeah, but then if like the CSA's phone number is my cell number, but I don't want to, I really want to keep the CSA money completely separate from my personal money. And now I realize that it's not Venmo that I tried, it was Zelle. So I'm sorry, I got confused. They're similar. So I haven't tried to do Venmo. I tried Zelle, and I don't use Venmo very much, and I have heard mixed things about, I guess, its security. So if you use Venmo more and you could speak to it, I'd be happy to hear your thoughts.
I mean, I use it personally for my business to accept payments for all the reasons that people are highlighting. They don't use credit cards or PayPal. There's a lot of fees attached to it. It has some limitations in terms of weekly spending limits. So that's the only thing I have to get around. Speaking through it for the CSA, like I'm not the person who manages the Venmo. I can just say that last year, our core team set up a Venmo account for the CSA. And I'm guessing it's probably not connected to any of his personal like usages of Venmo, that he just set it up to be for the CSA. And we can submit online payments that way in addition to checks. And it's been really helpful and useful. So,
But then the member also needs to have a Venmo account.
yeah, whoever is receiving, who's ever the leader that would be taking the check payments or instituting it some other way, he's just the one that also provided this as an additional payment option.
Okay, no, because just personally, I'd like to streamline things and be able to offer just one way. We've offered paper checks and various other things, and I just like to give myself a little less work. So I don't particularly want to offer something like Venmo if everybody then has to sign up for a Venmo account. Just because it then adds up. And then do you know what the weekly spending limits are?
Well, the weekly limits in terms of money you can send through the app. So if I was trying to pay you, I think it's like $2,000. I'm guessing your CSA isn't more than that. So if people use it as an app that they pay their babysitter or other fees on, like they may just have to wait till the next week to pay the full amount.
But that's spending, that's not receiving. You can receive any amount, or is there a limit on how much you can receive?
I mean, that I don't know. I've not had more than a few $1,000s in the account at once. I transfer it instantly into my TD bank. So.
Okay.
Did Kevin want to say something?
Yeah.
Yes, please. The Kew Garden CSA has an account, a business account at Chase, as does the Glendale CSA. I know people are having trouble getting bank accounts, but Chase rules allow CSAs to have business accounts. They may not know it. They don't always understand who we are or what we are, but there are several that use Chase. And if anybody wants to talk to me offline about it, we'll do it. And so having Chase, we use Zelle for various payments. But our farm uses Farmigo for the signups, and we're very grateful that they take care of all that. But having a business account at Chase has really helped our CSA, especially with our grants and things like that. But it can be done, and don't let Chase say no.
Oh, okay, but then you're not receiving large amounts of money for your farm, because
No.
Farmigo, right? Yeah. Okay.
Okay, everyone, I see some other good comments in the chat, and I want to be respectful of all of your time because it's 6:59. One thing I wanted to throw out there, because I think we could keep talking. I am absolutely open to having another like 1 hour session in a few weeks if folks think that would be helpful. And possibly, Ali had mentioned, was it the the food cooperative? And maybe we could see if Raina could, join us for a little bit and talk with her about
the food co-op.
The food co-op, yes. Yeah. And talk with her about what they do there, and just, have another conversation, less structured, less slides, more sharing, if folks would be interested in that. How does that sound? Would that be helpful as well? Yeah, I'm seeing some thumbs up. Cool. And double thumbs up. Woohoo. Okay, so let's let's plan for a couple weeks from now. I'll send out another email invite. I have to actually check my schedule, but we'll plan for about the same, like 6 to 7 o'clock time on a weeknight. And I don't know that we'll be able to turn around everything that fast, but we'll try to send the resources as fast as we can. Anything quick that folks want to put either in the chat or say? We could go 1 minute over. I know we lost a few people, but any other burning comments? No?
This is Ali. I just want to say thanks so much for having me at the beginning, and it's so exciting to be around you all. So hope to talk more soon.
Yeah, we just volunteered somebody else from CNA to be at the next talk.
Like you, Cheryl, you're from CNA.
I'm here already.
Well, great, everyone. Thank you, thank you, thank you for your participation, for your dedication to CSAs. Thank you, Anna, Sia, and Cheryl. They have been working many tireless hours as the board of Just Food, pulling us forward here. If folks are interested on the advisory committee for Just Food, we are looking for members. It is volunteer, I will tell you that, but we are looking for folks who are interested in sharing and you know, sharing your knowledge, guiding the path with us, and doing some teamwork. Thank you, Ali, for your presentation and your sharing your information. Thank you all. And we'll be in touch with the next round of, and yeah, and Kevin was also on the advisory committee for a very long time.
Yay.
So yeah, thank you. And we will be in touch, and we'll have another round in a couple of weeks, and hopefully it'll work for folks. I'm just thinking 2 weeks Tuesday. So, but we'll see. Keep that in your head.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Sherry. And
All right. Thank you guys.
Right.
Have a good night.
You too.